We are live, right? Okay. Just checking. Okay. So I'm going to do the roll call. As I said before, Commissioner Dials and Commissioner Martin have resigned, but we do still have a quorum. So Commissioner Warwick.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Kiesling.
Here.
And Councilor Bishad.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Hey. So,
Now you say
number 2 on the agenda, Jessica? Sorry.
Yeah, so now we do the Pledge of Allegiance.
What's that?
The Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry, thank you. Do we have a flag somewhere? Okay, we could start. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, I think the only way you can do it is just completely ignore everybody else and just say it the way you know it goes.
Yeah. All right. So site plan reviews, do you want me to go ahead and read number 2 and then turn it over to staff?
Well, first start and ask if any counselor, well, yeah, read 2.1, ask if anybody has any
comments. There was
conflicts.
Something I was missing. Okay, right. Okay, so does anybody have any commissioners wish to make any disclosure or abstain from participating or voting on this matter because of a possible financial gain resulting from the application? Do you own properties within the area entitled to receive notice of this hearing, or because you have a direct private interest in the proposal, or because you have determined that you cannot be impartial? I think that I probably live within the property area. I'm not quite sure what that area is, but it just says.
Yeah, that's a weird one because the code book used to say that, you know, certain distance has to be noticed, but they actually overhauled that section of the code. Oh, sorry, I don't mean to get sidetracked while we're already in the site plan review, but I wanted to let you all know that Ryan got those binders printed up for you with your copies of the code book. And drop them off here. So they are here at City Hall if you'd like to come pick up your own copy of the code book.
Fantastic.
And just the sections pertaining to zoning.
All right, okay. Well, assuming that I might be in the area, I'm 3 houses-ish, half of a block away maybe. So I just thought I should say that. Is there anybody that is concerned with me participating in the process? Okay. Does any commissioner need to declare a prior contact with the applicant or any party involved in this hearing? If so, please state that with whom you had contact and what was said. If any counselor declares an ex parte communication state, the parties will have the right to refute the substance of this communication during their testimony at this hearing. Does anybody want to declare prior contact? I do, because he's my neighbor, so I talked to him. So, but I did not talk specifically about this issue. I'm just informed about it. So, okay. Has any commissioner viewed the property, and do you have any evidence gained from that that you want to state for the record? I viewed it.
I've driven by all 3.
Okay.
That's all.
Yeah, and I didn't physically drive by it, but I viewed it on Google Street Maps and took a look at it. And I took a look at the property tax records on the county property tax website.
Okay, Ryan, I think we're ready for the staff report then. Is that right? Or do I need to read number 2, the site plan review?
Which item are we discussing first, Chair Brown?
Looks like we're going to be doing site plan review for 2.1, reviewing and considering a request asking the city to vacate a right of way adjacent to 28 Dardanelle Street, owner applicant James Newstead.
Okay.
Next time when you read that part first.
Okay.
So I included a brief memo in the packet for the Planning Commission members. So technically this really is not a quasi-judicial land use request. This is a request asking the city to vacate public right-of-way and to transfer that to a specific property owner who owns adjacent property. So I think the adequate and correct role for the Planning Commission is to review the request and determine if in the Planning Commission's mind, the better good of the community is served by vacating the right-of-way and transferring ownership to that property owner. So I think there are a number of things to consider there. Is there any need for that as a future street? It's probably unlikely that there'll be a bridge crossing, but perhaps some kind of access to the river is important. That's a decision the Planning Commission could review. Is there any need for future utilities in that area? They mentioned in their application request that they would leave, I think, a 10-foot easement on the east side for existing and future utilities. So there really isn't a set criteria that the Planning Commission would review this against. They would just use their judgment to determine what's in the best interest, in their opinion, for the community at large. And if you think it's in the interest of the community to consider vacating that right-of-way, you would, in my suggestion, send a recommendation to the city council stating why you think it is a good idea or why it's not a good idea. If the city council decides to act on this request, there is some state statute that the applicant mentions and my report mentions. So there's some specific noticing of properties that would have to be done according to ORS related to properties around that area. And then there would have to be an ordinance attached to the vacation of right-of-way. And then the applicant would be responsible for creating a new map that would be filed with the county so that it legally transfers ownership. So that's kind of in a nutshell what is before the Planning Commission. I'm not sure you should expect to have a final decision tonight, but you could. My suggestion again is that you as a group make a recommendation to the city council. And if there's anything I can offer to help in discussion, I'd be happy to. Jessica may also have comment to provide. And that's everything I have at this time, Chair Brown.
Thank you.
I don't think I have much comment to add. I mean, I have been down there. There's really no reason for the public to be accessing the river right there.
Not right there.
They end up trampling all over people's private property when they go that way. But I mean, maybe one day we will have a bridge there. It is the major cross street. I guess that could happen.
I would hate to lose the opportunity to do that in the future. I mean, it's kind of a pie in the sky idea, but giving away the right of way gives that opportunity away forever.
Yeah, I'd like to, part of it is I'm on the Parks Commission, but also I was on the Trails Commission back in 2004. And actually Margaret called up to talk about this issue because she was as well. And Rob Lowe was on it too. Basically, in 2004, the city got a grant from the National Park Service for a trails plan. And
can you speak up just a little bit? Because I'm having a hard time hearing you. Sorry.
So in 2004, the city got a grant from the National Park Service to study trails. And we spent a year there was public.
I'm sorry, Steve, I don't mean to interrupt you, but Marvin, maybe we should bring the applicant in so they can hear everything that's being discussed. I mean, you can mute them or unmute them as needed, but I think they should probably hear what we're talking about. Although we shouldn't be discussing it yet. We're not to that point, but.
Then we can just do it on discussion, but.
Okay, is Amy there as well?
Do any commissioners
they're
have
together.
any questions? Do any commissioners have any questions for staff? I guess that's really where we're at right now, is if staff can help us out with any questions that we have. So Stephen, I don't know if you were getting to a question for staff or.
Well, the problem is our staff is recent and doesn't have the history. And it sounds like that's a problem all around, is that there actually is a long history to this.
Can you speak up just a little bit? I don't know if anybody else is having the same problem.
It's faint. You're faint. Get closer to your mic, maybe, Steve.
Okay. This issue has a long history in Gold Hill, and the history goes back, well, the history I know about goes back to 2004, when the National Park Service came in to help us do a trails plan. Everybody hear me?
To help with what?
A trails plan.
Okay.
And the trails plan is published. The city's got it. It's on my website for the Gold Hill Whitewater Center. And we've been working for 15 years to get the trails plan implemented. And anyway, then a few years later, after that program, the EPA was brought in. Actually, this is fairly recently. The EPA came in for a visioning of Gold Hill's downtown. And this same issue came up with that visioning process, which was, again, a very large public process in Gold Hill to decide what was the best thing to do with Gold Hill property related to parks and also to these streets. And in 2004, anyway, on the trails plan on page 14 is basically a drawing of the pocket parks that happen on those street, at the ends of those streets that go to the river. What makes Gold Hill unique as a town in Oregon, one of the few towns in Oregon, is we actually are right on the river with these streets that go to the river. And there has been a fight for 15 years with the previous owners of this property who essentially took on those, it's not the only one, it's the owners of those properties have tended to encroach on the public access. And what makes this really important right now is that we are concerned with, we're trying to increase density in that neighborhood, which I think is a good thing, and increase affordable housing. But at the same time, when you're increasing density in a neighborhood like that, you do not want to cut off those places where you can actually see the river or perhaps access it. And there are three of those points that were first, outlined in the trails plan and then brought up in the downtown plan a few years ago. That basically say, the last thing we want to do as a town, as a community, is to give up those rights of ways.
Well, Stephen, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I think right now we're still, and I think that's, if it's a question that you have for staff, is that a question you want to pose to Ryan about some history there? Ryan, can maybe you add?
I think Commissioner Kiesling brings up some really good points, and a trails plan and downtown plan sound like those are two things that I was not familiar with that probably have clearly identified future plans for those right-of-way areas. So those would be important things to review in compiling a formal recommendation to the city council that we could look for and incorporate into a recommendation from the planning commission.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for staff?
I don't know if this is the right time to ask this, but again, I didn't physically go down to the property, but looking at the Google Street Map view, it looks to me like, from what I could tell, there's yard and parts of the yard has been expanded out on what I would say was the city street there. And maybe that's just my interpretation, but that's kind of what it looks like to me.
I would concur. I think that's fairly common in several areas of Gold Hill, including that area.
Yeah, which is, I guess that there's good and bad to that. I mean, in reality, that probably should not have happened. So I don't know. I mean, that's probably some of what we need to look at. And I agree with what Steve's saying. We certainly need to look at the history. And again, given that and what might be the situation down there right now, this is certainly probably not a decision we can make tonight.
So any other questions for staff? All right, so what I'd like to do, tell me if I'm out of order here, but I think that the next phase would be for the applicant's testimony. So if we could have the applicant, please move forward, and please limit your presentation to 15 minutes, please. Jim?
Good evening. My name is Amy Gunter, and I am here on behalf of Jim Newstead. He is available as well. He's the owner of 28 Dardanelles. I don't know if it's helpful to the viewing public, if there is a viewing public. I do have a slideshow. If I can share my screen, it's essentially the same photos that are in your packet. But I don't know if people have the opportunity to see that in your presentation.
I think that would be helpful. Can we give Amy the screen share? I think it would be helpful for the public.
Did you catch that, Marvin?
Amy?
Okay, cool.
Right down at the bottom, you can click on the bottom there where you can say give access for the host on the bottom there. We're next to the video. Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Can you see, is that the actual slideshow, or is that just the graphic, or like the background of the PowerPoint? Oh, there we go. Is that better?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, great. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. I'm here on behalf of my client, James Newstead, the owner of the property at 28 Dardanelles. This view is the most current Google Earth image photo, and it essentially right to the right and the left are the intersections of, I believe it's called Riverside. And so this is looking down. The yellow house is the front house, and you can just barely see the Newstead house in the background. That's their eave. That's way in the back. And then you can see there is like an arbor type of structure that's sort of in the middle of the right of way, roughly. The 2.9 acre property abuts an unimproved 80-foot wide right of way for Dardanelle Street. It extends past the intersection of that Riverside Avenue along the frontage of Mr. Newstead's property, and terminates at the roughly the bank of the Rogue River. Past the terminus of what is, I guess, the most improved section of the unimproved street, the right of way functions really like a driveway approach to the two properties that are past the right of way, and specifically Mr. Newstead's property. So Mr. Newstead has asked me to approach the city of Gold Hill about possible right-of-way vacation for the right-of-way of Dardanelles. And this is sort of the preliminary layout of what we had come up with. Partially the reason why there was a bit of area that I suggested to Jim to not propose as part of right-of-way would be to retain public either pedestrian access or public utility access down along a portion of the right-of-way. Often right-of-ways, if they're vacated, utility easements or public pedestrian access easements or different sorts of easements to go through are placed on properties. Of course, this one doesn't really go anywhere, so it would really be more likely public pedestrian, because I can't imagine that there's actually public infrastructure for utilities. Maybe a sewer line in there, but there's definitely no electric or anything like that. So that is what we were here this evening to ask the City of Gold Hill for. I understand that the Planning Commission is a recommending body to the City Council, and so we need, of course, your guys' blessing before we can go forward. But I think that Mr. Newstead can probably speak more directly to any questions about like why he's requesting this. So Jim, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for your time tonight. And I just wanted to go over a few things, just to kind of touch on what you were saying having to do with the landscaping that was previously done on the property. That's been there for decades from the previous owners and the previous owners from the previous owners. So I just continued maintaining the grass that was out there, hedging the blackberry bushes, planting bulbs, and irrigating the flowers to make it look nice and pretty. Or else, if I did not do that, it would just be all overgrown and a mess. I also paid roughly almost $1,000 to remove a 100-foot tall, mostly it was a dead, rotted tree that was hollow from the inside, that was going to fall on my house, my vehicles potentially, or even my child that runs around out there. Having to do with the intersection at Riverside of Dardanelles, just the road narrows down and basically is just completely unimproved, that nicks down to that gravel driveway that goes right into my parking area at my house. So basically the way it looks is just it's a dead end anyway. So just looking at it, I've had a couple people come down there, and I know it's a city right away for Dardanelles, but I've had 2 people one time had to contact the sheriff to somebody who ended up in my backyard from that right away. So it's also just a security safety issue as well. But I would like to continue maintaining it and landscaping that area just to keep it looking beautiful, just like our town is.
There was
Okay. Go ahead, Amy.
Okay, there was a brief comment about densification and possibly more dwelling units. I missed the first part of the discussion, so I was just picking up on the last piece. But looking at the FEMA flood insurance rate map, more than 50% of that right-of-way is floodway. So it's not developable in any way. There is a margin of error, I should say, on the FEMA maps overlaid on top of the aerial photography, but it looks like a substantial portion of that area is floodway or 100-year floodplain. So just a note about development potential is extremely limited within that section of right-of-way just because of those federal regulations.
I also want to add something as well. That area to get down to the river is incredibly steep in that area, and you'd have to have if you want river access, it would be a very steep staircase, and there's not really any sort of bank for someone to stand on. So if that was a concern.
Okay. Any other comments from Amy or Jim?
That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So does the commission have any questions for the applicant? Have any questions for the applicant? I have a question. Jim, I actually was going to ask, so that question, it sounds like you said not really any bank, but is there a bank at all down there? If there is one, is it a sliver? Is it 5 feet? Do you know?
It wouldn't even be 5 feet. I mean, I've walked kind of around the edge of the property, but I was in water when I did that, so I was a couple feet in water. There's no bank.
And you know, honestly, when I went down there to look at it, I felt a little uncomfortable because I felt like I was walking on your private property because it is so close to your home. It felt like I was encroaching on your property. But so I didn't really get a chance to see how steep it is. But do you know, is it as steep as, you know, I know that how steep mine is, but I know as you go further down the river, it's not as steep. But can you give a general idea of how many feet down it is from the road and how steep the pitch at that?
You know, Wendy, I mean, we live right next door. I'd love to get you over here and I'll show you. It's incredibly steep. It's a lot steeper than my backyard in access, and it's much steeper than yours as well, because yours actually has a nicer incline, you know, walkable. But that section's incredibly steep. And just to clarify too, when I first purchased the property, I noticed that it had been used as a dump or landfill at one point, and I was told by other neighbors that people used to drive down there and throw trash over the hill. So I like to leave things nicer than the way I found them. So I ended up climbing along that steep bank, you know, as good as I could. And I pulled out a lawnmower. I have pictures of it. I pulled out Rubbermaids and plastic, beer bottles, cans. I mean, so I wasn't a big fan of that. So I ended up pulling all that out myself and paying for the disposal fee too.
Thank you for doing that. That's amazing.
Of course.
Are there any other questions from the commissioners to the applicant? Amy, I have one question for you. You said FEMA map. Do you have something that you can give to us of what you're talking about?
Yeah, so I was looking at it while I was on the screen. It's through it's the FEMA Map Service Center maps, and I can email it over. Otherwise, I could actually pull it up and share my screen with you again. And then I can email it so that you have a copy of it. You can create they're called fermets. It's a little version of the floodplain map. If I could spell Dardanelles correctly, that would help a lot.
I also, here at City Hall, we have floodplain maps.
Okay.
So I can send that out too.
Yeah, I can show you just really quick what it looks like.
I'm just curious what that might look like.
Yeah, they're fairly helpful. So let me move this over here. Okay, and I'll share the screen. So this is, trying to scroll and zoom. So this is what a typical FEMA floodplain map looks like. The stripe is the floodway, so that's technically the undevelopable portions. It marked 28 Dardanelles out here in the river, but it's actually here. So here's where the street terminates into the edge of the property, and then this is the unfinished right-of-way here. So this is floodway, undevelopable. This is 100-year floodplain, and this is a cross section of the base flood elevations when FEMA did the studies. So those are available through this map service center. They're super helpful information for your community members to have easy access to the FEMA maps, and then the city, of course, has them as well. So that's what I was referring to.
So another question I have is, how did you come up with a 10-foot easement?
I was trying to do a 12-foot. That's sort of a typical pedestrian access easement. Allows, if say it was like a paved ingress egress access easement, it gives you the ability to have like a 10-foot paved strip and then the gravel shoulders on either side, so that people can pass each other, and then like say there's someone on a bike, you can step into the gravel and get out of their way. So it's just sort of some communities have it actually spelled out in their code, like a public pedestrian access easement shall be X number of feet wide. So I was just kind of shooting from my hip of working in different communities throughout the valley.
You said you were looking at 12 feet. Why didn't you stick with the 12 feet?
I think I said just 10 to 12. I didn't know if Gold Hill had anything specific. I'd have to look at my letter exactly to see what I said.
Ryan, do you have any comments on that?
I don't think so. I'm not sure what the floodplain and FEMA mapping have to do with. I mean, that's information about the property, which is useful, but I'm not sure what the application is regarding whether or not it's.
Yeah,
useful to the
it's sort of
city or-
irrelevant to the application. Yeah.
The reason I was asking is that, you know, I'm going to be making a recommendation. I'm assuming if it goes one way or the other, let's say it goes a different direction, we'll talk about that in a minute. But I just wanted to ask what your plans were if you were granted this easement in developing the 10 to 12 foot, you know, pathway and separating that from that property. Are there any ideas, or is it something that you'd be willing to take on and develop and put pavement in there for people to be able to walk down there and look at a view? Or, I mean, has there been any discussion or thought around that?
No, it was more to preserve the city's ability to retain the riverfront access was really what it was. It wasn't necessarily intended to be improved with this request. It was more of a, instead of taking the full right of way, I saw the trail master plan. I understood what was in there and what the city's goals are. And even though it's 10 years old, that doesn't mean it ceases to be important to the community. And so it was to preserve that potential future access down there. I'll let James speak to if he has any other ideas. We haven't discussed anything happening there.
No, this is just basically to preserve the front part of the right of way and absorb it into our property for sake of landscaping and upkeep and access. If there was any kind of if Dardanelles was extended and there was more traffic flowing to that dead end, that would make access to our home virtually very difficult if there were multiple vehicles coming and going from that place as well. And then that would create a hazard for my little one running around. So as I look at it pretty often, you know, it just looks as though it is an unimproved dead end that goes into my driveway. So no future plans as of yet.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've got, again, I don't know if this is a point to discuss it. I would be less concerned about a bridge ever being built there.
Mark, I want to give you a chance to be able to give some comments too, but if there's no other questions for the applicants, I'd like to open it up to comments. I don't know, Jessica, do we have people in the audience that might have questions, and are we going to allow for that virtually? And you're on mute. Oh, you're still on mute.
Press to talk thing is not working. I didn't get any notification from anybody that wanted to speak for any of the things tonight. I don't know if the webmaster got any. I'm assuming not, or he would have said something. So I don't think there is any opposition hanging out.
Okay. Then I think we're going to open it up to discussion. Is that the next phase?
Yes, that's next.
All right. So sorry, Mark, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Yeah, again, in my mind, that'd be the least of my concerns, a bridge ever being built there. That's a long ways across the river at that point. I don't ever see that happening. One thought I had was, and again, going back to Steve's thing with the trail report and stuff, and wanting to certainly be aware of that. One thought that came to my mind was, instead of a 12-foot, the city maintaining a 12-foot right-of-way, expand that out to 20 feet, which would, if that was a direction to council wanted to go ultimately, if they were to decide to grant this, maintain a 20-foot right-of-way there, which would, that would align with the widths of the alley and the alleys there on the plat maps for the city. Maybe more so just as a matter of continuity there. And perhaps that might be something to consider.
Stephen, would you like to give a little bit more a thought now? Because this is the time I think that maybe you could add some more thoughts about the trails.
Yeah, you know, going to the question of density, it's not a question of building there.
And you have to get a little bit closer to your mic. Sorry.
So the question of density, the problem or the future of Gold Hill is that it's developing, is that more houses, you know, the lots are being filled in. And the one advantage that Gold Hill has, I mean, all of our efforts for 20 years have been about being a river town. That's what we have. You know, Jacksonville has Britt and all that, and the downtown stretch, and Ashland has whatever it has. Gold Hill has the river. And the river is the most significant thing. And that's why we've had the state parks come in and national parks come in and work on these plans. Unfortunately, we haven't had the staff to continue those plans, get them built. But one of the key things from both the National Park Service Park Plan and the EPA's downtown plan were these pocket parks at the end of these roads. And if you narrow them down, then they cease to be functional as scenic spots. They're not useful. And this goes back a long way. Margaret Dials called up, and she was part of this original planning, and she's no longer with us on the Planning Commission. But she was telling me about how the former City Works director, you know, was always in conversation with the owner of the house in question now. And the house in question was always taking care of the property, and Roy was always reminding him is that you don't own it. And, you know, it's city property. And over the years, that's been increasingly forgotten because our trails, our parks department has been overwhelmed. And so it's gotten smaller. So this kind of key bit of Gold Hill has gotten taken away from the public. And I own property on the river, in town and out of town. I understand the dumping issues. That's one of the things that happens if you own river property. If you own it, when you're adjacent to the most valuable public resource in town, there are obligations that go with that. And taking care of what's out in your front yard, even though you don't own it, is part of that obligation. And that's something I've dealt with for 20 years and spent a lot of money on, a lot of time, a lot more time than $1,000. I think that, what's happened over the last 15 years is that property has gone from being what was then fairly public, so that somebody walking there would go, wow, this is part of our joint town, to, oh my gosh, I can't go there because this is private property. And the value of that property, I mean, we're talking about, 1/8 of an acre of riverfront property in Gold Hill at a time when riverfront property goes for a lot of money. And the real value is not that dollar figure, it's probably $100,000. The real value is to the future of this town in public access, in viewing. I mean, that's what the reason that our downtown is the way it is we haven't developed stuff like that. And if giving it away right now would be really stupid. That's my thought.
I don't disagree with that point either, Steve. So.
I mean, I hear where you're coming from. I mean, if I think about it that way, yes. But what could it be used for? I mean, it's the end of a street. So, I mean, if you really think about it, it's like, it's the end of a street and it's in front of somebody else's driveway. So,
But it's still open space. It's
Yeah.
and a
You know-
place to view the river.
One of the things that you could think about, if one of the reasons we've had to move we're going to build a bridge for the Rogue River Greenway, and eventually that's going to happen. But one of the reasons we had to move it, it was going to be downstream of the Story Chair, which is that Native American rock. And we had to move it from that spot because basically the Native American elders were talking about the viewscape. And the viewscape is actually critically important. It's what you see. And the viewscape of a town is what makes it important. What makes in the future of the Gold Hill is the viewscape of the river. And when you give up the viewscape where you constrict that and turn it into a private lot, when the rest of the town is becoming more and more dense, you've shot yourself in the foot as a developer. Those are the most precious places we have. And and if you don't see it, then it's hard to explain it. But
no, I see it. How can I not see it? I'm sitting in front of it right now. So I totally get it. I totally get it. And I understand why that would be important to the community and to the citizens to want to have a place to view. I just thinking, kind of seeing in my head, okay, well, if we would put something really nice down there, like a little light, and actually created like a little area for people to sit and view it, that would be wonderful and amazing. But there's no parking because you can't park down there because you block other people's driveway and access to their home. So I guess it's, so I when I try to think about people going down there, people could walk down there, I guess, and
that's the point of the whole National Parks Trail Plan is that this is really the thought of creating a walking town. It's like Jacksonville. You walk through it and you have places to go. And, it's really important to work with the people. The thing is not to screw up the local landowners. I mean, I'm a landowner on the river too. I don't want to, but it is working in conjunction to create something that's really nice, that's really inviting, and ideally that the local landowners take pride in and take care of because it's their front yard. And at the same time, it's not screaming out to other people, this is private property, stay away. And it's a hard balance. And it's a hard balance right now because of our poverty and because of our homeless population. But if we give up this possibility now, then we've really shot ourselves in the foot for the future. And that's what makes this complicated. I completely understand the local, the person next door saying, hey, I want this for my own protection. I understand that. But that's not for the city. We have to do better than that as a city, or else we're not looking out for our children or the future or anything.
Any other comments from the commission?
Yeah, the only thing, again, I can agree with a lot of what Steve's saying, and I can see both sides of it. So I'm, in that respect, I'm not sure what the answer is right now to this question.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's what I wanted to kind of talk to Ryan about next. If there's no other comments from the commission. Ryan, I understand that we're not making a decision. We're making a recommendation, and that's not something we've done before. So maybe you could give us some guidance on this.
Sure. So a couple of suggestions of how you could proceed. You could decide that you want to review other information and come back and discuss this again at another meeting. You could see if there's a consensus among you to recommend approving the request or recommend denying the request, or to make no recommendation and forward it to the city council. So I can see a couple of paths forward. It definitely sounds like Commissioner Kiesling has some great points and might write a strong recommendation if the choice of the three of you is to recommend denying it. I don't know that I heard one of you with a strong recommendation to approve it. So that's just a couple of choices of how to proceed, and maybe taking a look at some of those trail plans and downtown plans that Mr. Kiesling pointed out would be a good opportunity for the Planning Commission to really give this a little more thought before making a recommendation.
I would like to see those. Commissioners, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we need to do a little more fact finding before we arrive at any.
It seems like that might be helpful in looking at what people before us, or currently, I'm not sure when those were developed, were thinking and wanting to do, and how that property might tie into it, to be able to help us give a recommendation to city council. So, so it sounds like we're going to request to review other information and put it on the next agenda item. Okay.
Sounds good to me.
And can I hear a motion on that?
Gotta come from Steve or Mark. I'm not supposed to say
I'll make a
anything.
motion to also move.
So is that a move? Is that a motion, Stephen?
Yeah.
To move it to the next agenda item?
And it may be, and the landowner can think about some compromise solutions that,
So is that your motion?
Yeah.
To have the landowner bring up forward some compromise solutions and also look at the trail plans and downtown plans in more detail to discuss at our next commission meeting?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Can I ask a procedural question?
Sure.
How soon before the next meeting would you need any additional information? 14 days, 10 days?
I think 10 days is fine before the next commission meeting. Jessica, that really depends on you.
I usually prefer to spring things on them at the last minute, so you take as long as you.
Me too, me too. Like right here. Hey.
You honest, Jessica?
Okay, I'll try to get you
You can
something.
get it to me, at least a week prior so I can get it to them. I think that'd be fine.
Okay, super. Thank you. And is your guys' meetings always the fourth Tuesday of the month? The regular planning commission meeting?
It's
Usually they're the third.
that way, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, because this is a shorter month. Okay, got it. Okay. I'll look at the calendar and just be in touch with you and Ryan.
I think we're going to discuss it
Yeah,
to just determine when our next meeting is going to be. Or do you
I
want
think it's going to be March 23rd.
Okay.
It's, February, March always follow the same. So March 23rd.
Okay.
That is spring break. Not that, we can go anywhere, but if you can, that's when you go. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have another agenda item review to consider request asking that the city approve a permit to build a garage at 1190/1192 4th Street. Owner and applicant Eugene and Heidi Schultz. And Ryan, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, and I want to make sure that the planning commissioners did get a revised staff report. The first staff report had an error in the percentage of lot coverage.
Yes,
Sorry,
we
hang on
did.
a second, Ryan. I'm going to see if the applicant's here. I'd like to bring them in before we
Okay.
start talking this time.
Yes, good idea.
Yes, it is. All right, cool.
Okay, So again, the applicant is asking to place a new garage on an existing lot that has a duplex. It's in the R1 zone. If it was a new construction project, it would be a single family residential build, but this is a pre-existing non-conforming structure that's allowed to remain. So we look at the criteria of approval in section 1748.050 and section 1716, 100 through 200. So is their site plan accurate? And basically our answer is yes. Let me see. So everybody has the staff report that they can look through. Get to really the meat of it is that we had 5 conditions that we recommended approval. 1, the applicant needs to revise their site plan to show that the proposed garage complies with the 10-foot rear yard setback. That's along the railroad right-of-way. So the rear yard setback requirement is 10 feet. And I think they're encroaching into that 10-foot setback. So they'll have to revise their plan. Number 2, if they're going to have another driveway, which they probably would with another garage or a garage, then the driveway needs an encroachment permit. They can obtain that from City Hall and then build the driveway in conformance with public works standards. They also need to show an elevation so that we can see that the garage is less than 35 feet high. And a corrected one, there was a condition that they revised the site plan to show that the 50% building coverage is met. And after reviewing it, that building coverage percentage was definitely met. It's closer to 30% that the total building space would occupy. And then the final condition, all development is subject to compliance with the Gold Hill Municipal Code as well as state and federal laws and regulations. So you have the staff report to review if there are any questions I could answer, but those are the 4 suggested conditions of approval from staff.
Commissioners, do you have any questions of staff?
Would point out one maybe tricky part. The standard front yard setback is 20 feet, but there is a section of our code which makes sense in Gold Hill in section 17.44.010. If you look at the adjacent properties and their current existing setback is less than the 20 required feet, you can allow a setback that is in line with the neighboring property. So there are quite a few areas of Gold Hill where older homes were built that are not set 20 feet back from the front property line. And if you're in a neighborhood where all of the adjacent properties are not set back 20 feet, it kind of doesn't make sense to require one house out of a whole block to be 20 feet back. So in this area, the neighboring properties are much closer, in some cases with 0 setbacks. So the requirement is only that the rear yard setback be maintained, but the code allows that the front yard setback can be consistent with neighboring and existing development.
Thank you. I forgot to ask if there were any commissioners that any commissioners object to, commissioners wish to make any disclosure or abstain from participating or voting on this matter because of possible financial gain resulting from the application, to own property within the area entitled to receive notice of this hearing, or because you have a direct private interest in the proposal, or because you have determined that you cannot be impartial. Is there any commissioners?
No.
Do any commissioners need to declare prior contact with the applicant or any party involved in this hearing? If so, please state that with whom you had contact and what was said. If any commissioner declares an ex parte communication state, the parties will have the right to review. But anyways, does any commissioners declare any prior contact with the applicant?
No.
Okay. And has any commissioner viewed the property? And if so, do you have any evidence gained from that visit that you want to state for the record? Okay. So any questions for staff, commissioners? Do you have any questions?
Well, I just have a question for Ryan. So they would need to basically provide an updated site map showing the setbacks, is that?
Correct. A site plan that shows that the setbacks are approvable, and specifically that the rear yard setback, it appears to be 6 feet, but would need to be 10 feet to meet our code. And then also an elevation drawing of the garage so that we can determine that it's less than 35 feet high. I'm sure that it will be, but we need evidence from them showing what the profile of the structure would look like to see that it's less than 35 feet tall.
Right.
So, Ryan, how does that work if we don't have the site plan? Is it possible to even make an approval of something that we haven't seen?
So if you approved it with the recommendations of conditions, the condition says that they shall turn in a site plan that shows they meet the 10-foot rear yard setback, and they shall submit an elevation drawing showing compliance with the height limit of 35 feet. So those are conditions. That means if they do those things and turn those into staff, you, as the planning commission, approve them. And then if they, for some reason, don't do one of those, it's not approved.
Okay. And did you say that in the last comment in your other statement that you would give that's also part the ability to be able to not be constrained by the front of the property? That's something that's also in here? Or is that something you're recommending that we add or change to this?
That was included in discussion in the staff report.
Okay.
So that so I did.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, because you asked for 10 feet, but it's actually 20 feet. Is that what you were saying?
So the code allows the property on the street frontage to be a lesser setback if the neighboring properties are, but it doesn't say anything about side yards, interior to another property, or rear yards, only if it's on the street frontage. So the building frontage is too close to the road according to our code. But since the neighboring properties are too, our code says that's okay. But it doesn't have a section that says you can be closer to the back of your property or to the neighbors on the side, only closer to the street.
Okay.
So I have a question, I guess maybe for Ryan, with regards to the conditions, number 4, subject to code as well as state and federal regulations. Actually, I'm looking at number 2, the additional driveway. There's a small ditch runs along the side of the road there where the area where the garage would be built. I'm assuming they would probably have to put a culvert in there to maintain that ditch, and the city would have to approve that.
They would, so they would have to, so if they came in, which I'm sure at some point they will, to get an approval for a driveway, I would work with Tony to provide either ODOT or APWA standards for a driveway culvert, and they would have to meet those standards. So that's the guidelines we would use. So unless there was some particularly trying or tricky drainage issue, we might have to use the city engineer to review something. Otherwise, we would simply provide them with ODOT or APWA standards and say, this is the size of culvert that you have to put in for a 20-foot driveway or whatever they propose.
Okay.
So there is a set fee for an encroachment permit, and I can't remember what that is, but they would pick that up at City Hall.
So again, and then assuming, I just want to make sure that if, obviously if the condition can be met, and Jessica would probably know how to answer this one, is we can make sure that that condition is met. And number 1, if a culvert needs to be installed, they'll make sure that that happens.
Yeah. For example, you guys gave conditional approval a couple of meetings ago to someone wanting to build a house on Riverside, and his condition was that he had to show he had easement access to that property.
Right.
And so
He
brought that to City Hall. I confirmed that it existed, and he was allowed to proceed because you'd already given your conditional approval. So it'd be just like that. I'd wait at City Hall for him to bring me proof of all the things that you've asked for.
Okay.
I mean, I won't wait day and night. I'll just wait during business hours. But
Sure.
Any other questions of Ryan or Jessica? Okay, I want to give the applicant some time to represent. If you could please limit your presentation to 15 minutes.
Thank you all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. This is Eugene Shulsky on behalf of myself and my wife. And we're willing to meet all of those requested items on the staff report, including the encroachment. In fact, we were probably looking at just piping the whole front of the property again, since right now it's currently a 12-inch steel culvert, and it's starting to show its wear. And so we just thought we would do it all at once.
That's probably above and beyond.
Well, are we at discussion now, or?
Do any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Shulsky?
Oh, how tall is it going to be?
No more than 17 feet at the current 312 pitch on a 8-foot wall. So that would be easy math. But since we didn't have a site plan, it was kind of a horse and cart issue. So we will actually draw the plans after we get your approval. Well, we want it to match the height of the house that's already there.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Shulsky? Staff, did anybody, is anybody in the audience that wants to come forward and speak about this? Jessica, is there anybody that on this item?
no, there's no one.
Okay. And I guess we're going to open it up for discussion. Commissioners?
Sounds good to me, as long as those criteria are met.
Yeah. I think it looks good to me too.
Would either of you, is there any other discussion that we need to have or any other questions that we want to talk about together? Can one of the two of you make a motion then to approve?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the application based on the staff recommendation and pending meeting the conditions listed in the staff report.
I'll second that.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
And I went ahead and emailed that staff report to him, so he has all the conditions. He knows what he's got to do.
All right. So I think we have one more item, correct? Ryan, is that true? Okay.
Yes.
It's like a site plan review to consider a request asking that the city approve a permit to build a new home on TL 2800 6th Avenue. Owner applicant Andrew and Christine Lowe, and agents Simplicity Homes. And Jessica, would you like to bring in the applicant right now?
Oh, I'm still unmuted. Yeah, that would be, I don't know. Marvin, do you have anybody else waiting? No? Okay. Guess they're not showing up.
Okay,
Which
so
they don't have to.
They don't have to? Okay.
They don't have to.
Does anyone wish to object to the jurisdiction of the commission to hear this matter? Does any commissioner wish to make any disclosure or abstain from participating or voting on this matter because of a possible financial gain resulting from the application, because you own property within the area entitled to receive notice of this hearing, because you have direct private interest in the proposal, or because you have determined that you cannot be impartial. Does any commissioner need to declare prior contact the applicant or any party involved in this hearing? If so, please state that with whom you had contact and what was said. Anybody? Any commissioners? Nope.
Nope.
Has any commissioners viewed the property, and if so, do you have any evidence gained from that visit that you'd like to state for the record? All right. I'd like to turn over to staff. If you could please review the staff report, that would be great.
And I don't think I said it, but for the record, this is Ryan Nolan with Rogue Valley Council of Governments. And so this application is for a new home and garage on an existing 0.23 acre lot in the R1 zoning district. We looked at this property on 6th Street as our first hearing over a fence permit. Now
Yes.
the applicant is looking to place a home and garage there. So I've looked through all of the approval criteria in 17.48.050 and 17.16, 100 through 200. And I found that all of the setbacks, proposed uses, etc., meet the criteria as outlined in the code. And so staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the request as presented. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Do any commissioners have questions for staff?
Yeah, I don't know. Because this is going to be built next to Rob Lowe's existing house,
Correct.
correct? And he's got an existing garage there. Is that garage going to stay?
No, this will basically go right in that location, a little behind where that is currently.
So that older garage is going to be removed.
Correct.
It's gone.
Oh, it is? Okay,
Yeah, it's gone.
all right. Because I Google Street viewed it. And the
Yeah,
garage
that's
is
old.
there. If I would have driven
Yeah,
by, I would have
walk
seen
past
that.
it.
Okay,
I walk past it every day. It's gone.
okay, so, okay. Well, then that answers my question.
Any other questions for staff?
That looks like a nice home.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll move to approve it.
it does.
All right, Jessica, is the applicant in the room yet?
No, he's not coming.
Okay, so did I hear a motion to approve?
Yep.
I will second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
That was almost too easy.
Yeah,
All right, so I think that, I don't remember if there's some other closing things
Yes.
to do, isn't there? Or do I just adjourn?
But we will have the next meeting on March 23rd, and I do already have some applications lining up for that one, so there will be a meeting.
Okay,
I have
oh, go
one
ahead.
question. I think Mr. Kiesling mentioned that both the trails plan and the downtown plan were online somewhere. If they are, if Jessica can share those, I would like to see a copy of those too.
Okay, I'll send a link to everyone here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. I would like to state that we're adjourned then?
Okay.
No,
Good
wait,
night.
Mark,
Well, I have
what?
we're adjourned. but-
Sorry, go ahead,
No, that-
sorry, no, we're not. I take it
Jessica,
back.
the house on Chovner Street, are you going to put that on the next meeting?
Yes,
Okay,
yep.
all right.
Do you want to have it sooner? I mean, we can have it sooner.
Yeah. Well, Ryan's already prepared a staff report for it, but I
Would you guys like to do that now? I guess we can if it's not
Oh, we
public.
can't because we
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
notice it.
Right, right.
So
But
as long as it's on the next meeting, I'm assuming.
yeah, I had a couple of different people that tried to sneak into this meeting at the last minute. So if you guys want to have a meeting sooner than a month now, that would be better because there are people that are already
I
waiting.
think it would be great, because honestly, I was a little concerned when she mentioned that that was gonna be spring break. I mean, we
Spring break.
need to meet on the 23rd. I'm not sure what's going on that week, but
Okay. Do you want to do it 2 weeks from now then? Or next week even? It's
Yeah,
up
we
to you.
can, either way, we can,
For that vacation thing, we told them, we.
Oh,
we
right,
gave them-
right. You know what? I'll reach out to her and let her know we're going to be having the meeting sooner, so she'll get me the document sooner. I'll talk to her about that.
Okay,
so we're
And
looking
we'll put that
at the 9th,
back on there too.
yeah, 2 weeks from now.
the 9th.
Okay, so that'll be the 9th then.
okay,
Okay.
okay.
Hey,
All right.
adjourned.
Thanks, everyone.